From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight, talking about a very important topic, juvenile justice reform. This is something lawmakers are taking on up at the legislature, something we have talked about endlessly on this show. We've done a whole series on Broken about our juvenile justice system. So how do we reform this system? What needs to be done? We want to get an inside look at what's going on in Davidson County, what we feel could be improved, at least from the perspective of a former assistant district attorney, Khadija Babb. Did I say that right, Khadija?
You did.
Oh, thank you.
You got it right.
Okay, I'm so glad. And see, I just put on my glasses just to really be safe. All right, so thank you for being with us. You were assistant district attorney for 3 years, right?
That's correct, yes.
And you're running for judge now.
I am. I'm running for criminal court judge. So I had to leave earlier this month, January. Well, now it's February, so I had to leave earlier in January to take that on, but I was there for 3 years. So.
And you worked in juvenile court when you were with the district attorney?
That's correct. Strictly juvenile court while I was there.
Strictly juvenile court. So I ask you to start, what do you think people don't know that would maybe surprise them? You were there every day basically for 3 years. What is it you think people need to know that they don't?
Okay, so I would say the first thing that people should know is that despite what we see in the news, because usually in the news we see the most egregious crimes, that juvenile crime is actually down. I think another thing that would surprise people is the fact that I know we hear a lot about our youth having guns. That's a huge issue, obviously. And MMPD just released statistics last month. 81% of the guns that are found are in stolen vehicles that are easy access, which basically means they have their keys in the car or their car's running or something along those lines, so the youth are able to get them that way. I think just in general, because a lot of people are not there day to day, as you have mentioned, just not understanding the process and the resources and what it means to rehabilitate. And I really think if we had more community resources and community support, that's how we reform juvenile justice.
I'm encouraged to hear you say, so you're saying juvenile crime is down. There have been very high-profile cases, very disturbing cases. Young people stealing cars, they have the guns, that's very disturbing. What do we do about that? And it seems like those kinds of crimes, I don't know if we're reporting them more or if they're on the rise. How do we deal with that? And what did you see as far as that was concerned when you were working there?
So during my time as an assistant district attorney, as far as the egregious crimes, it's like kids they're just opportunities, Okay, so you have a gun. So we would see some youth that never had a criminal history, and maybe they have participated in a, aggravated robbery or something along those lines. Maybe they took a car by force. And the issue is that the accessibility of guns, like that to me is what I feel like I saw the most, because it's like, giving candy to a baby. It's there, they're available, and now they have, they've been emboldened to be able to commit more egregious crimes. Whereas if they didn't have a gun, it might be less likely. So I think a large part of the issue is going to be the accessibility to guns.
And what do we need to do about that?
We need to start locking our car doors. That's the first thing. We need to start, if we do have valuables in our vehicles, especially guns, we need to put them in a safety box, a lock box of some sort. Keep all valuables out of reach. I think those are some of the small things, because like I said, these are cars, and definitely don't leave your keys in the car. I know we had times where maybe it's a husband and wife and they keep a spare key in the car, but nowadays if you just walk up to the car and pull the door handle, the car will unlock. So we have to stop keeping our keys in the car, and we also have to lock our car doors. I think that you see the signs all around Nashville, MMPD warning everybody to lock your car doors and take your keys in the house with you. So those are some of the few small things that we can do to start.
So that's things we can do. When we talk about juvenile justice reform, what needs to be reformed? If there are laws that are going to be passed by lawmakers up in the legislature, what laws would you like to see passed? Would it be tougher penalties, or penalties really at all, if an adult leaves a gun in their car and it's unlocked? That's a tough one. Or is it something else? What would you like to see as far as juvenile justice reform?
Well, as far as the guns being left in cars, I mean, people have a right to have guns. We just have to be just more responsible. And I don't want, because at the end of the day, even if your gun is stolen or your car is taken, you're still a victim. So I wouldn't like to see victims be punished in that kind of way. But I think this here is a start letting people know that majority of the guns are in cars that are unlocked. Now, as far as the young people, what I would probably like to see the legislature do is just put money towards resources, rehabilitation efforts, therapeutic services, and things like that. And in addition to that, support for parents. I think many of the youth that we see who are troubled, come from homes where their parents probably would need more support than they're currently receiving. So
you're saying put more money toward things that would help parents. You're also talking about rehabilitation for youth. What does that look like? What is rehabilitation?
So research shows that the more the young people come into contact with the criminal justice system, the more likely they're likely to reoffend. So rehabilitation is going to be therapeutic services, just community-based activities for them to get involved with, mental health services. It's interesting because while I was at the DA's office, I was trying to come up with a Saturday program, but something as simple as opening up our community centers and putting money towards that, so that if you look online, a lot of our community centers aren't, for one, open on Sundays, and then they close early on Saturdays. And that's just idle time for our young people to get into trouble. They don't have anything to do during those times. So that's something that we could look into, opening the community centers for a longer period of time.
And are you optimistic? So you're talking about mental health services. Yeah, certainly open the community centers. What about, there's some that are very frustrated when they see children, teenagers reoffending. And as a result of that frustration, they're talking about, sentences, jail sentences, locking people up, that kind of thing. What do you think when you hear that? What is the reality as far as how much we do lock up juveniles? Okay, so
I wouldn't say that we lock up juveniles unless they're the most egregious crimes, obviously, like homicides. And even then, as far as at juvenile court, technically we do not lock them up. We detain them until a transfer hearing, and then they may or may not be transferred to the adult system. And it's hard because since the files in juvenile court and the things about the youth are confidential, the public doesn't understand maybe what a youth is going through. So I'll just explain just briefly. So the process for a youth coming into, let's say a youth gets arrested, depending on the charge, they could be held in detention if it's a detainable offense, or they could be released back to their parent. Or they could be sent to DCS custody if, their parent is not willing to take them back into the home. That happens sometimes. We have a diversion program for offenses that are not as egregious, small offenses. So, and with our diversion program, this is before a petition is even typed. So the youth could be arrested, but it's before they actually have a court date. And as far as the diversion program at juvenile court, our recidivism rate is actually only 6%. So that's pretty good. So something is working. And with the diversion program, we partner with community providers and community services to keep those youth from coming further into the system. As far as youth who do not qualify for the diversion program, then we have to start kind of getting into the court process. But as an assistant district attorney, we don't just look at what was this youth charged with. We look, what was the youth charged with? What services have they received in the past? What does the home life look like? Are we going to be able to keep them in the community at this time and provide them with services and keep the community safe? So there are a lot of moving parts when we're talking about dispositions in juvenile court. I wouldn't even technically call them sentencing, because that's not really what we do. We don't really sentence the youth.
Do you think what happens now does keep the community safe? Again, there has been this coverage, of car thefts and the same kids getting out and redoing that over and over. And that raises people's blood pressure. That upsets people. But are you concerned when that gets out there that there could be an overreaction and people say, let's have more strict sentences, and you said there's not sentences, but we could go the wrong way? Or do you think we're not going enough the right way, or we're going the wrong way? What do you think about that?
I think for one, I would like to see the statistics on youth that reoffend, actually, because it's a very, very small percentage of youth that actually keep coming back into the system. As far as the youth that are on probation, we have a 20% recidivism rate. So again, that's pretty low considering. So those are the numbers that I have. But obviously, when we're seeing news reports about the same youth coming into the system, then we do get frightened. But crime, juvenile arrests are down. As far as the car thefts and the availability of guns, that is a particular issue that we have to address as a community. And I think we have to address that by giving the youth something else to do. There's nothing for our young people to do. So what do we expect them to do after school if they, aren't involved in extracurricular activities? Because maybe their parents can't afford that. So we have to figure out ways to keep them involved and keep them engaged in positive activities. And I think that's where we should go with it. Continuing to lock them up, continuing to keep them in detention, that's not going to be the answer, unfortunately, and research shows that. And I think as far as the community, we have to start here having this conversation, because the community doesn't know. They don't technically really know what we do at juvenile court. The only thing that they do see a lot of times is what we report, what the news is reporting, and those are going to be the more serious crimes.
Right. I think you're exactly right. And so the harm that comes from locking a child up or a long sentence, you're saying is greater than certainly the benefit. Is that right? And explain why. And then I'm going to start taking some calls. Ricky, others, hold on the line. But there are some, it's their natural reaction to say, this kid's out of control. He's stolen a car. He's, done some bad stuff. He needs to be punished. He needs to be, locked up. What is wrong with that? And talk us through that.
Okay. So for one, as far as a country, we have an issue with mass incarceration. So that's the first thing. And it's not working. I mean, it's not working. We constantly hear, crime is up. People are continuing to reoffend. We have to figure out something else. So that's the overall general. Incarceration is not the answer to fix the issue that we have. And I think it's necessary at times for people to be removed out of the community, have a break, sit down, maybe receive some services to go back into the community and be better. And I think I definitely missed your question, because the first thing I wanted to talk about was mass incarceration.
Well, I think, you're getting it. That's right on. I mean, mass incarceration, not the thing. And so when people say we need to punish, we need to lock up, these juveniles who are doing these things that are not good, we need tougher sentences, that kind of thing. I wanted you to explain why that might not work, why it maybe is the wrong idea. Get into that.
Okay, so it's the wrong idea because I like to explain it like once a kid has been arrested, taken to detention, that first time, that shock value of what just happened, it goes down. So that's the first thing. There's a shock value initially, and then if it keeps happening, it's just like, okay, kind of like, this is just what it is. This is what's happening to me. I don't care. Additionally, our youth, their mental, their brains are not fully developed. So that's another issue that we, have to consider when we are at juvenile court. Their decision-making part of their brain hasn't fully developed yet. So we have to also take that into consideration. But continuing to lock them up is just going to make them worse. It just is. I mean, you're pulling them away from their families. If they're not getting the right resources, then it's just going to make them worse. It's not going to help. We have to find another way. And to me, that's parallels exactly with mass incarceration. If we continue to lock people up and they get out and there are felons that can't get housing, how do we expect them, and they can't get employment, how do we expect them to be contributing citizens to society if they don't have the tools to do that?
All right, we are going to take a break. Then Ricky and Mike, I'm going to take both your calls, I promise. And others, if you want to call in, there's the number right down there, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.